get started today, let's just take a minute to do a little bit of practicing of what we've done so far. So I'm asking you to multiply this monomial times this trinomial. Same thing kind of down here on number 3, and then same thing down here. So I'm just asking you to do 4 problems before we get started. So pause the video, do these on your own, and in a second we'll come back and see how you did. Okay, so let's take a look at the first one. 3 times 2 is 6. X squared times x squared is x to the 4th. 3 times the negative 5 gives us the minus 15. X to the 2nd times x to the 1st. Add the exponents and get x to the 3rd. And 3x squared times 3, positive 3 is plus 9x squared. It is in standard form as the degrees on each term you can see are going down. The next one, did you get negative 10x to the 3rd, minus 14x squared, and plus 2x. Just be careful with your signs here. A negative times a positive, you should get the negative 10. Add the exponents, x to the 3rd. Negative times a positive, negative 14. Add the exponents, get x squared. And a negative times a negative will give you the positive 2x. Let's check the next one. So 9 times the 1 gives you the 9, and the a times the a squared, add the exponents, a to the 3rd, and the b comes along for the ride. 9 times the negative 3 is negative 27. 1 factor of a here, 2 there, makes 3. 1 factor of b here, 1 factor of b makes b squared. Plus 9, 2 factors of a, 2 factors of b. And a 9 times a negative 4 would be negative 36. A out here, a in here, a to the 2nd, b to the 3rd, and negative 18a, b to the 3rd. Okay, so the next one kind of has an intermediary step. So I'm showing you the distributive property here, and I'm showing you the distributive property here. Now watch that you have a negative times a positive is a negative, and a negative times a positive is a negative. Remember to distribute to the second piece. And now we are looking for like terms. So I'm going to start with that 6x to the 3rd. And he's got a buddy over here, the negative 14x to the 3rd. We add those and get negative 8. And remember that when you are adding or subtracting, you do not change the exponent. They both have to be the same, and it stays the same. Now I'm going to go across. I've got 5x squared minus 9x squared would give me negative 4x squared, and then there's another one out here, a minus 2x squared, so the negative 4 and the negative 2 make a negative 6x squared. And now I'm just looking for x to the 1st, and this guy is by himself, and since I did it in that order, it is in standard form. Let's move on today, though. We're going to move away from the monomials and start talking about what do we do when we multiply binomials. So we've got 3 examples on the slide here. You see the orange one, the green one, and the red one. So no longer are we multiplying just a single monomial. We've got sort of 2 things that need to be multiplied. We're going to use a little acronym called FOIL today, just to keep all of our ducks in a row. Okay, so here's what we just did. You know, when you take a monomial, you distribute that monomial to all 3 pieces. You see the answer right here. This is sort of the work that gets us there. I am absolutely okay if you go from here to this bottom step and don't show this middle step. If that helps you keep everything lined up, feel free to do it. But if you can go from here to here, we're perfect. Now what happens is when we have a binomial, it's not one thing being distributed, but it's 2. And the way we're going to keep that all together is we're going to use the acronym FOIL. And FOIL stands for first, outer, inner, last. So we're multiplying these 2 binomials, and the first term in this binomial is an x, and the first term in this one is an x, and x times x is x squared. I'm now going to go to the outer. So imagine that these 4 terms are sitting in the back seat of a car. Who's by the windows? Who's on the outside? So the x here times the 5 there, and we get 5x. Now we're going to go to the 2 people squished in the middle. So the 3 times the x gives me 3x. And finally, we're going to go to the last. So the 3 is the last one in this binomial, and the 5 is the last one in this binomial, and 3 times 5 is 15. So x times x gives me x squared. X times 5 gives me 5x. 3 times x gives me 3x, and 3 times 5 gives me 15. And now notice we have a pair of like terms, so our final answer is going to be a quadratic trinomial, x squared plus 8x plus 15. You're pretty much going to go probably from here to here. You do not have to write all this out. I'm just showing you where it's coming from. So you might go to here, put your like terms together, and there is your product at the end. So let's take a look at another one. And again, I'm going to write this out. You might want to just pause the video and just do it yourself, and then come back and we'll see how you did. But start by multiplying the first terms, then the outer, then the inner, then the last, and then combine like terms and make sure your answer is in standard form. All right, let's see how you did. So the first terms would be the 2x and the 3x. We multiply them and we get 6x squared. The outer would be the 2x and the 4. 2x times 4 would give me 8x. The inner would be the 2 stuck in the middle. 6 times 3x would give me 18x. We're going to join him up with his like term in a minute. And the last would be the 2 constants, the 6 times the 4, which would be 24. So we need to have these 4 things combined. And notice we have a pair of like terms, and 8x and 18x would make 26x. So our final answer in standard form would be 6x squared plus 26x plus 24. Okay, your turn, guys. Try to do these 3. Pause the video, and we'll be back to see how you did. Okay, so x times x is x squared. I've got a negative 4x and a positive 5x that we're going to join to a positive 1x. And 5 times negative 4 is negative 20, and there is my quadratic trinomial. Next one, 2w squared plus 5w minus 25. 2w times w is 2w squared. The outer will give me 10w. The inner will give me negative 5w, and when I put those together, I get a positive 5w. And a negative 5 times a positive 5 is a negative 25. And there's my quadratic trinomial. Next one has a little bit more negativity, so watch your signs in here. Plus we have 2 variables. So 3x times negative 2x is negative 6x squared. The outer is going to give me negative 12xy. And the inner is going to give me positive 4xy. It doesn't matter whether it's yx or xy. The commutative property of multiplication puts those together. So again, we had a negative 12xy on the outer and a positive 4xy on the inner. And when we add those together, we get negative 8xy. And then a negative times a negative will give us a positive 8y squared. Let's just kick it up a notch this time. And instead of multiplying 2 binomials, we're going to multiply a binomial times a trinomial. It's too much for FOIL. So basically, we're going to look at taking that x is going to distribute to all 3 in the quadratic trinomial. And then we're going to go back and we're going to take that 6 and multiply him by all 3 terms in the quadratic binomial. And that's kind of what you see me doing here. It is not necessary to write this step out, but you're going to find that it is beneficial to write this one out. So x times x squared is x to the 3rd. X times negative 6x is negative 6x squared. Oops, there we go. X times negative 2 is negative 2x. Now we're going to move over to the 6. 6 times x squared is 6x squared. 6 times negative 6x is negative 36x. And 6 times negative 2 gives us a minus 12. Now I just need to find everybody that needs to go together. So you see me rewriting. Again, this is not a necessary step. I would highly recommend that you write this one. You have to, and then you're going to go to here. And if you can jump over the next step and do it correctly, you are okay. So the x to the third doesn't have a buddy, but the negative 6x squared will combine with the positive 6x squared, and he will actually drop out because the coefficient will be 0. And then I have a negative 2x and a negative 36x, which will make a negative 38x. And then again, the negative 12 doesn't have a buddy. So my final answer will be x to the third minus 38x minus 12, which is a cubic trinomial. How about if you try this one? So pause the video and give it a go. Okay, so let's see how you did. Here are the steps. This is not necessary to have written down, but just in case you don't have the next part, I want you to see where it came from. So this gave us the 6x to the third. This gave us the negative 8x squared. This gave us 2x. This gave us negative 15x squared. This gave us the 20x. And this gave us the negative 5. And now we're looking for like terms. So I would have you write this step, mandatory, and now let's see how those all come together. Notice he does not have a buddy, but the negative 8x squared will combine with the negative 15x squared to give us the negative 23x squared. The 2x is going to combine with the positive 20x to give us 22x, and then the negative 5 is also buddyless. So usually, most of the time, when you multiply a binomial times a trinomial, you usually will get the 4 terms. In our last example, it just so happened it worked out that one of them fell out, but normally you'll end up with a polynomial of 4 different terms. Okay, so here is sort of what we've learned so far. The first one is a monomial times a monomial times a trinomial, and then we've got a FOIL case here, a binomial times a binomial. So pause the video and then come back and we'll check these, and then we have 4 more to do in just a second. Okay, let's see how you did. Final answer should have been negative 6y minus 5y squared. And if you wrote only that, don't forget to have it in standard form, and you have it right, you're good. But if something went wrong, I'm showing you where the negative 6y to the third came from and where the negative 5y squared came from. But if you wrote only this in that order, you are good. Okay, the next one. Final answer, negative 6b to the fifth plus 16b to the third minus 11b squared. If you've got it, you wrote that down, you're good. Make sure it's in that order so it's in standard form. But if something's amiss, I'm kind of showing you where each term came from. Okay. And here comes our first FOIL. So first times first, outer times outer, inner times inner, and last times last. And did you get ab squared plus 4b minus 24? So there's your 8b squared. The outer would be negative 12b, and the inner would have been positive 16b. And a positive 16 and a negative 12 will add to a positive 4b. And then the positive 8 times the negative 3 gives you a negative 24. Okay, there are 4 more for you to try. So one more time, let's pause that video and we'll come back and see how you did. Okay, so here comes our first binomial times a trinomial. So the w has to be multiplied by each of the 3, and the negative 1 has to be multiplied by each of the 3. So there is your 2w to the third. Then you would have had a 3w squared and a negative 8w. Then a negative 2w squared, a negative 3w, and a positive 8. And then when you combine like terms, you should have gotten this. And again, check your form to make sure it's in standard form. Your highest degree is at the lead, and your constant is the caboose. All right, here's the worst possible FOIL in that it's got everything negative, but it kind of works out that you end up with all positives because you're multiplying an awful lot of negatives times negatives. So you would have gotten a positive 12t squared, and on the outer would be a positive 21t, and on the inner would be a positive 20t. 21 plus 20 would give you the 41 with the t, and a negative 5 times a negative 7 would give you the plus 35. Let me uncover this one, see how you did, and this one. So we have 24h squared, negative 16h, positive 8, negative 3h to the third, positive 2h squared, and a negative h. And when you combine up the like terms, you should have this. Next one, 2x times 2x is 4x squared. The outer is going to give us 18xy's, and the inner is going to give us 18xy. Again, whether it's xy or yx, you can commute to have them both look the same because of the multiplication, commutative property of multiplication. And then 9y times 9y would give you 81y squared. Let's try one last problem, kind of giving us an idea where we might see some of this show up in geometry. We want to find the expression for the area of the shaded region. So the shaded region would be this green outer area around this white rectangle. So we have a big green rectangle that basically had a hole cut out of it that's a smaller white rectangle. So you're going to need to multiply our length times our width to get the big green rectangle. We're going to have to multiply our length times our width to get the small white rectangle, and then subtract the larger area minus the smaller area to get the area of the frame, which would be the green around it. Why don't you pause the video and see how you do trying that by yourself. Okay, now that we're back, let's see how we did. So multiplying the 5x plus 8 times the 6x plus 2 is a FOIL operation. So 5x times 6x would give us 30x squared. 5x times 2 would give us 10x. Add that to 48x would give us 58x. And 8 times 2 would be 16. First, outer, inner, last. Notice that when we multiply two linear binomials, we're seeing the result of a quadratic trinomial. Now we're going to multiply the length and the width of the white rectangle, and this is going to be a monomial times a binomial. So distributive property would give us 5x squared plus 30x. We now want to take the area of the green rectangle and subtract out the whole. This is the operation that we need to do. And remember that when we subtract, we're going to subtract the 5x squared, but we're also going to subtract the 30x. So 30x squared minus 5x squared will give us a lead term of 25x squared. 58x minus 30x will give us 28x, and then the 16 is just the 16. And our result is also a quadratic trinomial. Make sure you have it in standard form. And that's pretty much it. But this problem brought a lot in. It brought in the FOIL. It brought in what we talked about with multiplying using distributive property, and it also had a subtracting polynomial. So it's a pretty solid problem. Well, I hope that gets you started with FOIL and multiplying binomials times trinomials. So there's an assignment. Give it a go, and we'll see you soon. Have a great day, everyone.